Growing up, my dad was really into science fiction. You wouldn't think it, this grumpy old Daily Mail reading football fan who spent 90% of his time shouting at clouds, but whenever it came to the standard television rotation, when it wasn't every sport under the sun, it was Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I still got...
Sometimes the original series, depending if they were rerunning it or not. Also Sliders. Sometimes Quantum Leap. Movie-wise though, my dad got a big kick out of the films he'd grown up with, and they all tended to revolve around non-fiction adventure flicks, with films such as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Centre of the Earth, or Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, alongside more sci-fi elements like Quatermass, War of the Worlds, Planet of the Apes, or modern iterations like Alien and The Thing. I grew up watching all of these alongside him with an air of terror and fascination, and this led me to become obsessed with otherworldly encounters. I became so obsessed, I started collecting books about UFO sightings and alien abductions, and sometimes stuff about ghosts, but not as many about ghosts because ghosts aren't as exciting. They don't shove things up people's arses for one. Come on, ghosts, stop being so prudish. I was hooked on extraterrestrial encounters and absolutely convinced that I would one day see a UFO. Which I did. Sort of. My arse is still intact though, just in case anyone's wondering. Why are you talking about all this, David? Well, there were quite a few games that catered to this niche of sci-fi horror even back in the 80s when video games were really just starting to expand into fully fleshed beings. But one that stuck out to me for sheer atmosphere alone was Amaurote, with a name I didn't even understand how to pronounce, even now. Here was something that looked and sounded like nothing else I'd ever played. Amaurote was the game I didn't know I'd wanted until I saw it. And then I wanted it. But I didn't need to want it because I had it. It featured an alien planet just like the films I'd watched with Dad. It featured giant alien insects roaming the landscape, again, just like the films I'd watched with Dad. And it featured haunting sci-fi soundscapes, just like the end of this sentence you can fill in yourself. As with most games released at the time, I had no idea what I was doing, but I found the whole thing entirely absorbing, just by simply wandering around, firing bombs at stuff and exploring this weird landscape as I ran away from annoying flies. It wasn't dissimilar to a camping trip in Scotland my dad once took me on, but with less flies and more bombs. I was looking forward to returning to the game, simply to see if I could figure it out as an adult, and truthfully, it's pretty simple. There's actually not a great deal here to be confused about. Presumably, it was one of the many games handed down to me without the original box, so I didn't have any instructions to go by. Either that, or I was just incredibly stupid. Start as you mean to go on, etc. The goal of each game is to wipe out the aliens without either destroying the city you're there to defend, or ending up with no money left. Because even though the entire Earth is at stake, capitalism is still more important. Obviously. Everything you do here is tied to your military budget, which you can use to order in more normal bombs, a special mega bomb that you need to destroy the alien queen, or for repairing yourself. It's quite interesting to see this method of simple management rather than a standard live system, and it's a shame it's not a little more fleshed out, but it's fine for what it is. Your first point of call in any map, really, is to order in the mega bomb, and then go and look for it. It'll be called in on the map at a random point, and you're given a handy radar that you can set to either look for the bomb, look for the queen, or look for alien flies in general. Order a bomb, set the radar to look for it, then go off and find it. Then, with the bomb in your sweaty human palms, you set the radar to look for the queen, go off and find her, blow her arse out of her elbows, and then set the radar to the rest of the boring, normal, massive alien flies and go off to, well, to stop enjoying the game. This is the exact point where Amaurote falls down. This is where all of the presentation and lovely otherworldliness crashes and burns harder than a fly trying to eat shit straight out of a furnace. Before we get into the very simple why of that, let me just readjust my own radar and show you what we've got here. This was a budget game released in 1987, and as such you've got to respect the fact it looks and sounds as good as it does. Check out this needless intro segment in all of its glory.
She's a little helicopter.
There were full-price games that didn't get presentation this correct, and while the game is a solid colour, you can at least choose which colour that is. Regardless, there's style here that is largely unmatched on the ZX Spectrum, especially for the time. The ship you're piloting is a bizarre four-pronged nonsense that spits out bombs from its topside bumhole. The UI is this lovely hexagonal beehive affair, which would make more sense if you were fighting bees instead of flies. But then the instructions don't actually specify what they are, it just says insects. So I've no idea where I got flies from, but I've called them flies and I refuse to go back and edit anything I've said because that's just the way I like to deal with things. We're just going to have to go with flies. I refuse to back down on this important issue, but I'm sure some tosser will kick the fuck off in the comments. Lord knows there's one on every video. Much like the life of a fly, Amaurote eats shit and dies pretty early on. Your first clue toward this, the controls are friggin' awful, but that's mostly because you're on a 3D plane and your brain just has to get used to what is up and what is down, which it never will, because you're not a fly. And yet, even in those early stages where you're constantly walking in the wrong directions because you're a simpleton, there's just something about Amaurote which, to this day, Thursday, feels like a wonderful achievement. And it's unsurprising to realise now that the Pickfords were the ones in charge here, with David Whittaker taking the reins on the wonderful music. All that said and done, we need to get back to why my enthusiasm ends there, because once you actually get to the point of tracking down the bugs and killing them, the thing that makes up 99% of the gameplay, you're going to find yourself incredibly frustrated for about 10 different reasons, most of which could have been solved with a few tweaks, which just makes it even more infuriating. To shoot, you don't have a gun, you have bouncing bombs, and these spit out of the top of your bumhole on legs and bounce in the direction you last moved. Note that it's not the last direction you pressed, but the last direction you moved, because that is important. The landscape itself is difficult to traverse. Some areas are free movement, such as roads or fields that look like this. Some areas, however, are two-directional. On these fields, for instance, you can only move horizontal, and with these fields you can only move vertical, albeit horizontal and vertical on an isometric plane, just to make this explanation more confusing. Some areas are completely locked off. Your feeble robot legs won't touch them because of reasons. I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to represent a rocky area? I genuinely don't know. It's probably not important. So bear that in mind. Your movement is restricted based on the landscape, but the monsters you're here to destroy are not. They can move freely wherever they fancy because they are flies, or possibly bees, maybe even wasps, and they can do whatever the hell they goddamn want. That's their right as a fly, and they're going to use it all the time. You'll be chasing after an insect down a field you can only cross in one direction, only to find that they've decided they want to bugger off in a different direction, which means you now can't shoot at them because you can only shoot in a direction you have moved. That's a pain, isn't it? You know what else is a pain? Just trying to shoot one of these things, regardless of all this restrictive movement. I have never, in my life, spent so long just trying to kill one single game. No, I have never in my life spent so long just trying to kill one single enemy in a game as I have in this. Your bombs are the worst designed weapon of mass destruction I have ever come across. If this was truly man's last stand against an alien invasion, you might as well just pack up and move to a different planet because this one is done. You'll be waiting centuries for this mess to be cleared up, and they'll still be knocking on the door asking for a tax return. Earth is fucked. Find a new one. Here's another issue for your plate. Your bombs bounce. They fire out the top of your sphincter cannon, and they don't hit the ground until they reach a few tiles away. Then they lift back up into the air, then back down. Back into the air, back down. Usually off screen, somewhere, as they outpace you and you've no idea where they are or what they're doing because you failed to hit the bastard fly that just moved out of the way. And now your bomb is just off, doing its own thing. taking a trip down the back alleys of this town that absolutely deserves to be taken over by a new species because the one that currently lives here invents stupid shit like this. Your bomb will continue its journey, slowly, until it hits something. Anything. That could be the edge of the map or a building, but it will carry on until it reaches an impassable object. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that's going to destroy any semblance of fun while you try to mop up these enemies. You can only fire one bomb at a time. One bomb. One bomb at a time. You can only fire one bomb. Why can you only fire one bomb? Why did they design it like this? One bomb. Why does the introduction screen show you firing multiple bombs at once? Do the Pickfords hate me? There are 2 Pickfords, but only one bomb. Bombs. The bombs can't be remotely detonated, that'd be the obvious fix here. You just have to wait, and in the meantime try to follow the fly that you just missed so you can make another feeble attempt at hitting the thing again. Miss, and then wait until that bomb explodes somewhere off screen so you can try again. The flies, meanwhile, offer no pattern in their movement. They will change direction on a whim, meaning there's no real way to line up your shots, even when you're on terrain that allows you to do so. You're just at the mercy of chance, patience, and sheer boredom. It took over 30 minutes to complete one level. Approximately 75% of that time was spent waiting for bombs to explode while I slowly walked across fields waiting for another chance to miss again. And it baffles me that this just went completely unchecked. The idea that a game could be fixed by either allowing me to fire more than one bomb or just let me cancel the one I'd fired. One extra button press, that's all this game needed to make it perfectly fine. The daft shooting mechanic with its silly bouncing bombs isn't really an issue on its own. In fact, I'd say it's pretty necessary in a game where the enemies don't fire anything back. You need some element of skill and randomness in order to give the game a bit of danger and longevity. But when that danger comes with the price of waiting and waiting and waiting until you can continue playing the game you're currently sat in front of, it just saps any enjoyment you would have been having. Amaurote is a flawed gem where the flaw is so painfully obvious it becomes impossible to see the gem. It's just flaws. Flaws and flies and flaws and flies and fucking bollocks. Thanks to nostalgia, I can still look at Amaurote fondly and remember what a kick I got out of the visuals, the sound and the design concept. But as a grown man with better things to do than sit around in a field waiting for a bomb to go off, the shine has been taken off this budget classic for me. It sets me up with the atmosphere of those films I enjoyed watching with Dad, but there's one fatal issue. Every time somebody misses in those films, you have to pause the film and wait for 30 seconds before you get to see the next shot. Sure, the action's still there, it's just as it always was, but I'm bored, and I don't have the mental fortitude to wait, god damn it. I've only got one life to live. Let me live! Anyway, Amaurote's probably fine if you've got the patience of a saint. I don't. I'm just here to pass on the disappointment to you and make you feel bad. Happy New Year.